another thing that you guys are doing, and I know Amelia has been a student of yours. So let's talk about it because everybody knows you guys have some programs.
Mm.
Let me see. Yeah, you guys can see that. Let's talk about real quick. I know this is much deeper than just the Master Herpetologist Program. You've got multiple courses here, but I wanted, especially being a college student and understanding the importance of this, first for people who either want to just get into college or maybe it deters them from the price and they just want to be a herpetologist or they want to learn what it's like. What can you say about these courses for maybe future herpetologists?
Yeah, I think that these courses are predominantly aimed at future herpetologists. And I can tell you that the herpetology course that I took in college, and I took it as an elective pass fail because I was not a biology student before that. It changed my life. And I added biology as a second degree before that semester was over. It was the first class I ever took where I actually ran the class to make sure I got a seat in the front. I never did that before. And now and that was at the University of Massachusetts. That class is no longer even offered at the University of Massachusetts, or at least last I heard. And it just makes me very sad. This very meaningful class is harder and harder to find, and I wanted to make a class that was accessible to even wider audience. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great friends and partners and colleagues who offered to put together these lectures. So it's just some of the greatest herpetologists around providing their expertise, and it's been organized into a way that it is the content of a college level course in herpetology. I'm very proud of it. And I just the overwhelming feedback I get from the students, who it's connecting with these people in the same way that it connected with me. And so it's just continuously rewarding, and not to mention the fact that that class alone has, in the same context as I mentioned how vital critter camp is for the frosted flatwood salamander. This master herpetologist has given us the resources we need to address all these other species as well. And it's not like we're doing enough. We're throwing band-aids on these things out here. We're trying to develop a model that we can have a sustainable platform to provide much needed resources for amphibians. I should mention that we worked very closely with the state and federal governments. And when we were starting in 2016, we were promised a startup grant from the feds, 48 grand to get us going on this flatwood salamander stuff. And that was right when the administration changed, and we ended up getting nothing, nada. And it was really challenging, and it was, and now in retrospect, I think that the promise gave us the courage to organize and incorporate and get this thing started. And then pulling the rug out from underneath forced us to get creative very quickly. And so those were some lessons learned that, and we're still trying to grow this up. But you're looking at the instructor list there, and I stand by this as a really great list of people to introduce people to herpetology. Everyone here is really knowledgeable and passionate. And so, yeah.
Oh, there he is. Dr. Mashaka's on there. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. He's given a couple lectures in for the classes because he's great.
At Toad Wally. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with him about his work with you'd probably be interested to know this, but apparently this I don't know how much he knows about this, but the spotted salamander is starting to decline in Westmoreland County, the county where Powder Mill is, where he has been working and doing a lot of his field work. So I'm sure he would be interested, or others up there would be interested to know some of your methods. I'm not sure that they would pull in a captive colony, but it's just interesting to know, especially because you guys have on the website too that the spotted salamander is a priority species.
Yeah, it is. It is for us predominantly because it's my gateway species. I don't think I'd be as crazy as I am if it were not for the adorable spotted salamander. That just happens to be that what I focused on as a undergrad, and I just love those things. And we focus on them because here in the Piedmont of the central Georgia, they're not they're stable, but in Atlanta, they've been extirpated, and so it's been really interesting we found a handful of spots where they're still hanging on in Atlanta. And so we've worked with the land managers of those areas to help protect them. But really exciting is we've worked with people and now have constructed two artificial wetlands in Atlanta. And we've successfully established spotted salamanders a few years ago at the first site. We do an annual salamander stroll as part of the Atlanta Science Festival, and we take people right to that wetland and they can see spotted salamanders and eggs. It's tremendous. And then we've also now had spotted salamanders. So these are like we've bred the salamanders and we've released them, and now those salamanders are breeding on their own at a second site. And so that happened last year. We're still waiting to see because the spotted salamander season is just starting right now. We've had egg detections from our research team this morning, and so it's very exciting. February 14th, so a week from today, is when I put yellow spots all over my black Jeep and drive around like an idiot, spotted salamander, until the salamander stroll, which is in later in March. And so I would just try to bring awareness to the spotteds because they're glorious, and we're really lucky that they're still hanging on here in Atlanta.
No, I do
Have
road
you
rescues for them. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amelia.
how do you track the ones that have been through the facility already? Do you do like pit tags or like elastomer tags or?
Not yet, but the sites where we released them, the only two sites we've released them so far are sites where the wetlands were constructed from scratch,
Gotcha.
and there were no detections there in any of the previous years.
That's awesome to
But
get to reestablish them like that.
yes, yeah, exactly. So, and then the last year as well, we started doing the same project with marbled salamanders in Atlanta too, because that's another species with historic detections, but are really not doing well inside the perimeter of Atlanta.
So I guess two different things. The first one is, like I was saying, I do a lot of road rescues for frogs and toads. It's mostly American toads and spotted salamanders because they're just so slow in terms of getting off the road. The spotted salamanders up here breed sometime around April. I don't know if that's interesting or not to you because you're, hitting the date. Now you're talking about Valentine's Day, right? Your true love, the
Yeah.
salamanders. Just funny. Let me share something with you real quick. I could show you what we have in Pennsylvania, what it looks like. So this is the amphibian reptile survey that's going on, and these are the species that we have of ambystoma here. So the spotted salamander is literally the only one that is stable, but in certain locations it's been declining. Like I was saying in Westmoreland, the Game Commission told me that. But our tiger salamanders have been gone for a very long time. The one that I'm hunting for right now that we're trying to work with a couple of groups with is the Jefferson salamander. For us, there's not a whole lot of understanding of where they're at, and even though this is saying that they're native, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're still here or they're in a high abundance. They're very susceptible to decline. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of them in any given population except for in Center County. But it's just something I wanted to share too, because not only are these species declining where you're at, but they're declining or they have declined where we're at. So it goes the whole way to the north. It's not just something that you guys are seeing in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, I was obviously in Massachusetts for my undergrad, and I lived there for a long time. So, like, I'm still my internal clock is ready for migrations in mid-March with the first rainy nights in March. That's when the spotteds move in Massachusetts, at least, and the Jeffersons, and sometimes the blue spots as well. So I didn't realize that there were ever tigers in Pennsylvania. That seems crazy.
Like 100 years ago, I think. But I have a fascinating question here. So I've heard a lot of the site fidelity, especially for the spotted salamander. Now, walk me through. You said you created these artificial wetlands for them. Now, how difficult is that for adults to go into this new ecosystem? And like, I guess, is there any challenge with them with their high site fidelity?
Well, we tried to circumvent that by introducing eggs and larvae to the mesocosm. So it added an extra 3 years, while we're waiting for our salamanders to become adults. But we tried to hedge our bets for that specific reason of site fidelity. There's still a lot of uncertainty around it, but it is believed, and I would believe this, that they imprint on their natal wetland at metamorphosis. So, we definitely aim to get recipient ponds. We aim to get our animals out there either as in the egg or larval stage. We never release metamorphs or adults, if we can help it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I completely get that.
Thanks. Most people think that's a silly consideration, but nobody knows, and we try to hedge our bets.
Yeah,
everyone thinks of that in terms of like turtles, but
yeah, I'd say it's flipped with what we're doing up here. What my goal was to reintroduce wood frogs specifically to suburban neighborhoods, and you could obviously start with the eggs, but I didn't want to move the eggs because I'd have to go and get more state permits and stuff like that. But what I could do was build the habitat for the wood frogs, and if they were around the area, then they would come. And thankfully, what we've had the opportunity to do is to see wood frogs come to suburban neighborhoods, and I'm not exactly sure how common that would be for you guys. I know they're in the mountains, but I never really thought it was a common occurrence to see like wood frogs in a neighborhood because they're just such a closed canopy species. They're very similar to spotted salamanders in that regard. But I guess that's the best thing about this is that either the chicken or the egg, which came first. And for us, it was the other side, but we wouldn't be able to pull that off, I don't think, with the spotted salamanders. Like we've had no salamanders find our pools at all. But again, they weren't necessarily a target species. But that's interesting to know that you say that about how you're reintroducing them, because as we're creating these artificial pools, if their offspring are in with the wood frogs as we're moving tadpoles, then there's a possibility we could set up these spotted salamanders to these more permanent bodies of water as well, and hopefully continue to aid them in reproducing.
More permanent?
Yeah. So it's like an 18-gallon, 3-foot long, 8-inch deep. It's almost like a cement, like a rubber bin. You'd put concrete in to pour it and to mix it together. And I've been digging holes, and we put that in the ground with some pond plants. And because the pond plants cycle everything, it's worked perfectly for the wood frogs. And we're trying to experiment now and see, what could we do to encourage like the gray tree frog, or maybe even some salamanders. I don't know. It would be a whole different discussion talking about them, head starting in the pools instead of finding it, because it's not necessarily what we were aiming for. But that raises a lot of interesting questions for what we're doing. So that's really, really good to know, just some of the stuff you were talking about with like the head starting and the offspring stage, basically.